You gonna do a dental apple?
Yeah, demo apple.
A damn old or a demo? Oh, a demo.
You're a demo.
And now we're going to take this, place the round into the center, and push down.
Oh.
Cuts the apple.
Oh.
And be careful because that is sharp. I like to take the butt of the knife and push it through. Do not use your hands because you will get cut. So now what we do is, to see how many apples you need, I slice it fairly thin into the pie plate, and we will continue that with the apples until we have it full. And once again, be careful because that's sharp.
So what's the menu for the week, Mom?
Apple pie.
No. What are the hours?
And and you need under the counter lighting.
I have some lights that I can add.
So for the filling, we have 1/4 cup sugar, 1/4 cup packed brown sugar, 3 tablespoons all-purpose flour, 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon. So I need 1/4 cup of sugar, and I'm gonna go ahead and use this measuring. That's 1/4 of a cup of white sugar. And right now we're going to go ahead and stick the butter into the pan and put it on the stove to slowly melt. Keep a close eye on it. And then we save this butter to put a little bit into the apple pie. Now we're going to get 1/4 cup of packed brown sugar. And what they mean by packed brown sugar
As you pack it into the measuring cup?
Exactly. So we just take this and dip it in there and just push up against the side. That way you don't get your hands dirty. Sugary. If you have a little bit more, that's fine. Just make sure you've got plenty of brown sugar. Right. So now we'll put in 3 tablespoons all-purpose flour. I'm going to use this tablespoon since we're going to be using this for the water, but since it's dry, I'm just going to go ahead and put 3 tablespoons in here. And it's all-purpose flour, not self-rising or bread flour. Just plain all-purpose flour. All right, that works. Should have done that to begin with. So that's 1, 2, 3. All right, and now it's going to be 1 teaspoon ground cinnamon. I prefer putting in a little bit more, just for that extra taste. So there's 1, 2 and a half. Put this little back on because you don't sprinkle. So we're through with that. And now we take a fork our mixture. And I like to smell it. If it needs a little bit more cinnamon, I'll add some.
How's it supposed to smell? Real cinnamony?
Yeah. But I put in 2½ teaspoons, so that should be enough. But you just want to make sure it's all mixed really well.
Now that's the filling.
That's the filling for the apples. And we're going to put this in a Ziploc bag. And then as we peel and slice our apples, after we've determined how full we want the pie plate, which that doesn't look like that's one apple for some reason. Then we're going to stick the apples in here.
Oh.
It just makes it easier to coat all the apple pieces. Smell.
Mmm, smells good. Okay, here, let's smell. For it.
You smell the cinnamon?
Yes.
Okay.
Chef Grandma in the house.
All right. So we've got that done. Now we're going to peel and slice some apples.
Okay, I think I need to pause it now.
Yep.
I have to get to work.
To save time when you're actually making the pie, I like to make the apple pie filling ahead of time. You can keep it in the bag and it's ready to go. And I like to do the pie crust to the degree of just putting together the flour and the salt. And then the night before I make the pie, I will put in the Crisco and then cover it. And if it's hot, I'll put it in the refrigerator overnight. And that saves you time when you're actually making the pie.
Okay, so we get a heaping pie plate full of apples.
Peeled and
Peeled,
sliced apples.
sliced.
You guys really have music on?
No, I'm recording.
So now we're going to take
You're recording?
all the apple slices,
Yes.
put them in the bag. You don't have to wash the pie plate, I just wipe it out. And that was about 7 apples, small to medium sized apples.
Gala apples.
Yes. A lot of people use Granny Smith, but I have found that the Galas are the best. So now we zip this. We're going to coat the apple slices simply by turning it upside down. And continue coating all the slices.
Who likes apple pie?
This guy right here. That makes it Facebook, I quit. I like apple pie.
Alright. So we're just going to let that sit for a while.
So you could take an apple slice out of there, right, and eat it like that?
You might need to try, make sure it's good. Sometimes you just never know.
Oh, yeah.
And while you're doing that, you're melting your butter on the stovetop.
Oh, man, that's good.
Aren't those good?
Mm-hmm.
If you just wanted to take an apple, like just for a snack, cut up an apple like we did, cut it up, and sprinkle a little bit of just already made cinnamon sugar. Okay, for the pie crust, we are going to use 2 cups of all-purpose flour, and you use a dry measuring cup.
Why can't it be wet?
Because your amounts will not be correct. I'm sorry, here's a wet one. That's for liquids, and this is for dry ingredients.
Gotcha.
So here's 1 cup. And it's basically like the brown sugar, it's packed. So there's 2 cups. And you take 1 teaspoon of salt, just regular table salt, and a level teaspoon. And you take a fork.
Those are spoons.
Yes, I will need a spoon here in a minute. And you take a fork and stir together the flour and the salt. It's not a lot of salt, but just enough to give it that flavor that it needs for pastry. Alright. So now we will take, and this is something you can prep the night before, put saran wrap on top, or in the morning, then, you know, do your Crisco.
Crisco when you prep, or
The night before.
So you can add the Crisco to it as well.
Yes, the night before.
Okay.
So this is, I need 2/3 cup of Crisco. But I really would prefer a hard one. So I'm going to go, we're going to pretend this is a 1/3 cup. Okay?
And what actually is it?
This is a 1/4 of a cup. But use a 1/3 of a cup. This kind, it's a lot easier to.
So is a 1/3 of a cup more than a 1/4 or less?
I don't know, but we're doing, yeah, a 1/3 of a cup is more than a 1/4.
So we're doing a heaping 1/4 of a cup.
Yeah. And what I do, a lot of times, depending on the weather, I know this sounds crazy, but you may have to add a little bit more Crisco.
If the weather is what would you
Whatever
add?
it is, just when you see your texture, then you take your pastry blender and start doing this number. And seeing how crumbly it gets when you get through incorporating the Crisco into the flour, you may need to add a little bit more.
What consistency does it need to be?
We will show you at the end of this process. Like good crumbly meal.
What's meal?
Well, you're going to see here in just a minute. And I always like to get this off the sides. And I'm right now, the way it looks, inclined to add a little bit more Crisco. I'm going to take a tablespoon.
There's the tablespoon. Oh,
I want this to be clean. That way your Crisco is still the same. Okay. I think this will be good. Just need a little bit more Crisco. This way you have a good showing of Crisco in there. And you just keep on doing it. And this is a perfect bowl. Now this recipe is for a two crust pie. So this is good for an apple pie with a bottom crust and top crust. Alright, so that's what your consistency looks like.
okay.
I'll give you an idea. Alright, now we're going to start adding the water, which I fill this measuring cup with ice. I've been letting it sit so it's really cold.
Mm-hmm.
And we start adding the recipe itself. Let me make sure it says 5 tablespoons, which sometimes it takes a little bit more. And I'm going to get rid of the ice because it's really difficult to get. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now let's mix it and see if it needs a little bit more moisture to stay together. Because you don't want it falling apart, but then you don't want it really wet, because that takes away from the taste of the pie crust. Here I'm going to add 1 more tablespoon. And see how it looks. Because we'll be putting it on the board here as soon as we get this. And so more flour is going to be incorporated into it. And I'm inclined to put 1 more tablespoon in here. 1.5 more. So if I take it, you take your hands in here and just squish it together.
Look what I found out here.
Who is that?
Hi.
Hey, sweetie.
What happened to your face, Jackie?
What's me? What happened to your face?
Hi,
Alright, show a
baby.
picture of yours. It looks like someone shot you in the face with Peter Griffin's makeup gun.
Ha 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 ha.
Okay, so this is a good consistency. Hang on, Ben. I'll get my hug. So that's what you squish it together,
Great.
Okay.
and it works. Okay.
Preheating oven. Preheat. Where'd it go? To 400. Okay.
All right. Also, what we need is a knife. Okay. So we take a little bit of flour and put on the board.
What board?
This board. This is called a board.
The counter?
Yeah.
Okay.
Counter is a board. We take our dough out. There's a little bit more in here. Alright. This out of the way. And then you just kind of squish it together. You get all the moisture incorporated. And I'm going to go ahead and cut it in half. One for the bottom and one for the top crust. And your objective is not to overwork it. Get it squished together and as round as you can start. It almost looks like I need a little bit more moisture in there. See what happens. Put a little bit of flour on your rolling pin and you roll it. Put a little bit of flour, turn it over. And the reason why you do that is so it doesn't stick to the counter, because the crust will absorb some of the flour. And you try to make it, see how that, if you have it something like that, then just kind of squish it together, because you can always manage it in the pie pan.
Okay.
Just a little bit. Of course, you can get flour on the floor, on you. rolling it, because you want it to be large enough to go into your pie pan and up the sides. And what I like to do is take the pie pan and go maybe just one little bit more. And then I think that this will be the last rolling. Alright. So I like to fold it over like this and transfer it in here. And then half and half. And then, like I said, you have to manipulate it into the pie pan. I'm going to turn the butter off. And then you just press it down in so you don't have any air pockets right there. And then sometimes you have a little bit extra gap there. Not going to hurt to take a little bit from another piece that's overhanging. As you press it in there, no one's going to see that little extra crust. Okay, so we've got it pressed in there. Then I take the knife and cut the raw edges off. There's a little spot, but that's all right. Okay. All right, so the bottom crust is done. And then we're going to take the top crust. I like to go ahead and get my crust rolled out, because that's always one of the hardest. We can go ahead and incorporate our pieces in there. Once again, you squish it really good and make it a good round shape. A little bit of flour, and then this one too. We start rolling it out and incorporate the pieces in there. A little bit more flour. Once again, like the top one, it separates. We should put a little bit more water in there.
Cat's crazy for apple pie.
She's got something there distracting her, that's for sure. A little bit more. Cats are so easily entertained.
Yes, they are.
All right. Once again, you want to do this one. You don't have to have it as big, but you want to make sure that you'll be able to have it to the edges of the pie pan to cover. And once again, you can stick it in there. The top crust is a little bit trickier than the bottom. You kind of put it over here and go, maybe one more time. And you have that happen. So you take a little bit, and this is going to happen. You don't give up. You just mend. You don't have to use super glue or anything like that.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. But you just press it hard in there and then roll it out. Alright, I think we're not going to go any further with that. So now, before we do anything else with the pie crust, we're going to put the filling in. And you take take all of this, and now you can get your hands in there and really mix it up. start laying it into the pie crust. I don't do a shape, or I just make sure that it's kind of evenly distributed throughout the pie. You don't want a whole lot of air pockets. You don't want it over the top. Kind of stick that in there to get it all incorporated. Just keep on piling it in. And it's just about to capacity. I like to kind of squish it down a little bit. And, oh, there's a couple pieces left.
Oh, I can take care of those.
All right. So now, next,
What about like right there?
this is mine. All right. Now we're gonna put a little bit of butter on top. Oops. I don't put a whole lot of butter inside. Just maybe a tablespoon and a half, and I cut those in small pieces. Just kind of distribute it there. Don't need a whole lot. All right, so now we're going to see how difficult it is to get this pie crust. We fold it over again, and put in our air vents. So very gently, you cut 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And we lay it on top of the pie, putting this in the center. Fold it over. Fold it over one more time. And then you take it and press in there your little elements. And here's a little boo-boo area, but that's okay, because we can patch that up. And get it all incorporated in there. I'm going to put a little bit more right there. And once it bakes, you're not going to really see that much of a boo-boo. So you press it. What you're doing is you're pressing the top crust into that bottom crust. And that makes a good seal. So you press it down in there really well. And then we're going to trim the excess dough. Pick it up. And once again, like we did the bottom crust, just get rid of the excess dough. Like that. All right. Now, if you'll reach in there and get a regular dinner knife, thank you, ma'am. I didn't want to reach in there because I'm dirty. So, to get the crust together, I take a knife and slide it in between the two crusts and the pie plate. To get it away from the edge, so I can make the pretty little flukes. And you can kind of squish them together if you need to. I don't know if you can see that I'm doing that.
That looks broke right there. Is that okay?
Yeah, that'll be all right. That's one of the mended pieces. It'll be alright. There's not much we can do about that anyway. Okay, so we've reached the point where, there. So I press, I kind of hold. Alright. I'm going to take, and kind of wipe it down. Now we're going to do the flutes. And you just take your fingers like this and take this one and push down in there. Just push down. And there's one of the little boo-boo spots. Just keep on pushing all the way around. It's not going to be perfect,
but it's going to taste good.
It's going to taste pretty good. That's one of our boo-boo spots. And sometimes your crust is absolutely perfect. I think it depends on the weather. I may should have added a little bit more water to make it a little bit better. Sometimes you make the perfect pie crust. It's like, wow. But more often than not. And it doesn't matter how you end it. So you kind of got it crunched in there. Now you take your melted butter and start spreading butter on top.
And that was half a stick of butter?
Yeah, less than half a stick of butter. And I always like Parkay. It always seems, it's to me, I like Parkay like I like Crisco. So you have that. And to make that really good crust, that's plenty of butter. You take your sugar. Hands are clean. And I start sprinkling sugar on top. And I use my hands because it's a lot easier to distribute it more evenly. And it's hard to tell you how much sugar, but you can see how I'm just making sure it's coated evenly all over. And you're going to have a little bit of clumpy here and there, but that's all right. Those are good clumps. All right. You see any spot I missed? All right.
Perfect.
Now we'll sprinkle
So